Across the country today, you saw signs of increased security at schools in the wake of this tragedy in Connecticut. For instance, police recruits in Milwaukee undergoing training over the weekend to deal with active shooter situations, similar to Friday's rampage. As kids across the country showed up to school today, possibly seeing an armed police officer in front of their school. All this raising the question, how far should we go to keep our kids safe? Dr. James Shaw is a school security, safety, and violence expert, a true expert, at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology and author of the book, Jack and Jill, Why They Kill. Dr. Shaw, you spoke at the commencement ceremony at Columbine High School shortly after the massacre there, and you know what you're talking about when it comes to this, you call it adolescent side. I mean, young people in this country, whether it's late teens, early 20s, committing mass murder. And back then, this is you, April 20, 2000, saying, we must require of ourselves that we do more than grieve. What kind of inspiration, motivation, or direction do we need to make us protect our children against violence, including in school? Apparently, we needed a little more.
I agree, Megan. Dr. Lippman said a lot of truthful things in his statement. One of the things he said is to look for the signs. I would like to add to that, look for the signs of someone who is getting ready to engage in negative behavior. For example, more and more press stories are saying that the slain shooter, Adam Lanza, had a verbal conflict with school staff the day before the shooting, less than 24 hours before he went off, so to speak. We now sadly know after the fact that we can use verbal disputes as school people, verbal conflicts, threats, or veiled suggestions as a reason to deny entry. If you have a verbal dispute with somebody, you don't let them through the electronic gateway the day after. Airlines have practiced this policy probably for about 20 or 30 years. If a person is acting negatively, verbally, or making threats, he or she cannot get on that plane.
And maybe you even know, I mean, here we know that he shot his way in the next day, but at least maybe you are on a higher alert when such an altercation has taken place. Maybe that does warrant calling in a guard or something. Dr. Shaw, welcome back. So in terms of recognizing the signs, you know, I mean, most people are their regular folks. They don't, you know, they see somebody, he's weird, he's odd, he's shy, he keeps to himself. This guy, they said he dressed more formally. He held a briefcase in high school. He would pull up against the lockers, they said, when friends went by. He didn't like to talk to anybody. But how do you discern that from, you know, shyness, whatever, awkwardness, even a form of Asperger's, which, you know, can be a social impediment for some folks, from would-be murderer?
Well, I would advise everybody not to start labeling, not to use terms like Asperger's or autism. I think that is incorrect, it's wrong, it's offensive. It's like labeling someone who's too short or too tall or left-handed, that kind of thing. I think in the immediate future, we need to start paying attention to potential copycats. After Columbine, there were a spate of copycat type events on high school campuses around the country. I hope it doesn't happen here, but I think we need to keep our radar up and on in the event, in the prospect that there is a copycat out there wanting to get some kind of prestige, wanting to get some kind of flattery and attention.
Okay, you know, we saw it. We saw it after Columbine. And Dr. Adlow was on the program on Friday talking about how one of the reasons this is so terribly disturbing, what happened in Newtown, is we still believed, in the wake of Columbine and so many other incidents, that there were certain red lines, even the mentally deranged, even terrorists wouldn't cross. And the mass murder of 6- and 7-year-olds was one of them. I mean, we just still believed that. And the fear is that now that one person has crossed that red line, whether it's eliminated, whether the red line is gone. And Dr. Shaw, as somebody who does this for a living, I mean, what do you say to the school systems out there who now have to worry about copycats, and the parents out there who are very concerned?
I think school districts and school superintendents, their boards of education, and school principals need to work daily, if necessary, with law enforcement to come up with cogent, strategic school safety plans that make sense, that are executable, and that are current. I think schools need cameras, high-tech, high-capacity cameras in their front offices and outside the front offices around passageways and hallways. I think schools need to have visitors sign entry logs and exit logs. Just because you know a person, because he or she is repeatedly at your desk in the front office, does not mean you let your guard down, does not mean you let them through the electronic gate. I am cheered and encouraged by President Obama's wanting to help every school district in the nation. I think it would be good for him to look at the former Safe and Drug-Free Schools Act, which had billions of dollars in a past administration or two. However, they were funding things such as magic shows and dunking tanks at schools. We can do much better than that.
You know, we're going to talk a lot more about autism and Asperger's, because that reportedly comes from Adam Lanza's brother to the police, saying that he was on the autism spectrum. And we're going to talk a lot more about what, if anything, that means. I mean, you know how many people in this country have a diagnosis of someplace on the autism spectrum, and you know, the vast majority have no violent tendencies, and that's an aside,
exactly,
according to most of the experts, but it's become the focus of so many. So we're going to talk about whether that's fair and what people really need to be looking at here. But I do want to ask you, I know it's only been 72 hours, but having looked at, you know, this guy, the police said he shot his way in. I mean, they had the cameras, they had the lockdown, the teachers did everything right from the sound of it. How could they have done something differently on Friday?
I don't know, Megan, that they could have. I think the teachers, God rest them, I think the teachers did everything they possibly could. They gave their lives. They ran toward the shooter. The principal and another teacher or two ran toward the shooter to block him and protect kids behind them and around them. When you've done all that you can do, what was it that you failed to do? I don't know. I think that's an eternal question that we're going to be debating, pondering, and talking about for years to come.
When you finished those remarks at the Columbine graduation after the massacre, you said, "May God save the children. May the nation's victims of adolescentide rest in peace, for we the living must not. Our mission of saving our children has scarcely begun." You were so right. Dr. Shaw, thank you for being here with us.
Megan, thank you for having me.
All the best, sir.